AMBA BGA workshop. These are supposed to and designed to be interactive and engaging. And of course, I'm really pleased to be here together with my colleagues from AMBA and BGA, and then Philip, who is calling in from France, and then Caitrin, who is calling in from Cambridge, very close to me, or actually here in Winchester, where I'm calling from, just outside Boston. I thought I would start by introducing myself briefly, just to kind of get us going. So I've been engaged and related to AMBA and later to BGA since 2009. I was actually leading an EMBA program in Finland at Hanken School of Economics, which was an AMBA accredited school. And then I went to Montreal to an international conference and really got inspired by the community around AMBA. And on top of that, of course, also found a provost at the time who was working for HALT International Business School. And that's actually how I landed in Boston eventually as the dean of HALT, and have been here since that, so almost 12 years now. So I really have to thank the AMBA international community for opening my eyes, but not only that, also landing on a great position in an international, aspiring and rapidly growing business school. And when we look at the topic of today, talking about mergers and acquisitions in higher education, I would say that's a topic that has never been as relevant as and current as today. And on top of that, the institution I represent, HALT, we went through one just before I joined in 2009. We merged with a school in London, and that helped us to get a strong foothold in the London sphere, but also an undergraduate program. And then later on in the journey in 2015, I was heavily involved academically in helping us to operationally merge with Ashridge Business School from UK as well. And that brought us executive education, and on top of that, a very strong foothold in applied research, and also a broader range of accreditations. And that helped us to build what HALT is aiming to be today, which is the most relevant business school. So that's my journey, and it all ties very nicely back to what AMBA and BGA has to offer. And that's why I'm so immensely excited to be here today and launch BGA community and these workshops also for the US community. So welcome all deans and directors on my behalf. I would now like to hand it over to Andrew Main Wilson, who is the president of AMBA and BGA, and he will talk a little bit about what AMBA and BGA has to offer. Please go ahead, Andrew.
Thank you very much, Henrik, and good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's session. My name is Andrew Main Wilson. I am the Chief Executive of AMBA and BGA, and I joined the organisation in 2013. I am by background a business leader. I had director roles with the Thomas Cook Group and the Citibank Group worldwide, and came into education about 15 years ago. My own personal education is I have a Bachelor of Commerce degree from the University of Birmingham in the UK, and then I was educated at the Harvard Business School in beautiful Boston, where of course two of our speakers are today. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about AMBA and BGA, but literally only for a few minutes. Next slide, please, Victor. So for those of you who don't know the Association of MBAs, AMBA is the only specialist accreditation and membership brand for business schools' flagship product around the world, and also for students, which is the MBA. Unlike, for example, AACSB, who are great friends of ours, but are accrediting up to 1,500 schools around the world, of course, including over 500 in the USA alone. Our deans have told us that they want AMBA to be an exclusive network for a smaller number of schools, so it's got more prestige. So we are limiting the AMBA network to 300 quality business schools. And for the student and graduate members of any program which is AMBA and accredited, those students and graduates get free membership of the AMBA community worldwide. And there's almost 60,000 student and graduate members worldwide at the moment. So that's AMBA. Next slide, Victor, thank you. Moving on to BGA, the Business Graduates Association. This is our big new brand, launched only in January 2019, but already has become the world's fastest growing business school membership network. AMBA focuses specifically on accrediting the MBA program and some Masters in Management, whereas BGA is a broader and powerful brand again for student and graduates as well as business schools, but focuses on the entire school accreditation from undergraduate to postgraduate. And there's a very strong emphasis with BGA on two particular elements: practical entrepreneurial impact of learning, so that students graduate and are ready, perfect for the business world. And then secondly, responsible management and sustainability. Unlike AMBA, where you can only be involved with AMBA if you have accreditation, there are 3 levels of engagement with BGA. You can become a member school, you can then go for a second stage validation, and then the third and final stage, which is full accreditation. Thank you. Next slide, please, Victor. Just in terms of the growth of the network, AMBA has grown very fast to 286 accredited schools, and the BGA network has gone to 154 member schools, of which 13 are already accredited in the first 2 years, to be, as I say, the fastest growing international business school network in the world. Thank you. Next slide, Victor. This slide here is of a very recent piece of research that we've done with over 750 employers that I thought very neatly and dramatically shows the importance of accreditation. And we asked all 761 employers, when you recruit MBAs in the future, how important will each of the following aspects be for you? And we were very pleased to see that accreditation, in this case of their MBA programs, was seen as the most important element. 46% said it was very important, compared to, say, 27% for business school ranking. And interestingly, 80% of respondents said that internationalization of the MBA was either very important or fairly important, which makes sense because in an increasingly global business world, it's becoming more important to both employers and to students that the program they're in, both in terms of the student mix and the curriculum, is very much international in emphasis. Thank you. Next slide, please, Victor. Then finally, because I don't want to take too much time away from the discussion today, one of the other benefits of being an AMBA or BGA school is that there is a lot of leading edge research we do. We're very research intensive. And these are just 3 research reports that we've issued in the last few months alone that show the variety of leading edge thinking from our students, our graduates, our business schools and employers. And these 3, just by way of example, one is on international climate change. The other is all the data on MBA application enrollment from all 280 odd schools last year. And the third is the impact of technology research on education. So all leading edge thoughts and ideas that we share, with input from the AMBA and BGA community to benefit the whole AMBA and BGA community. And then just one final slide, which I think is very thought-provoking, albeit not for today's topic. But we asked 3,000 AMBA and BGA students and 600 AMBA and BGA business school deans and directors how they describe the current environmental condition of our planet. Because we believe very strongly that business leaders and those that create those business leaders, the world's best business schools, really should now take the major role over and above armies and politicians in making our planet a better place. And it's very interesting, even from the younger students, less than 1 in 5 felt our planet was in a good condition. And 61% said it was in a very poor, terrible, or fairly poor condition. And that rises all the way to just 14% of business school leaders being positive and 69% being negative. So one of those 2 aspects of BGA, the whole area of responsible management and sustainability, really is becoming a bigger and bigger issue for corporates, for the media, for consumers, for students and for business schools. And BGA is more focused on that than any other international accreditation organization. Thanks for listening to my intro. Henrik, I'll hand myself back to your capable leadership. Thank you very much.
Yes, I think we have Caitrin from Cambridge College who is going to go next. Please go ahead.
Sure, absolutely. Victor, should I share my screen or are you going to handle my slides?
No, please go ahead and share your screen, Caitrin.
Okay, great. Okay, let me see. Hopefully technology is on my side here. And let me know if you can see my screen.
Looks great.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you very much for having me today. My name is Caitrin Brisson, and I am the Senior Director of Academic and Corporate Partnerships for New England Institute of Business at Cambridge College. So over the next few minutes, I'm going to talk about our journey of being acquired as New England College of Business by Cambridge College. So as we know, prior to COVID, higher education has been an industry that has been suffering, especially among small colleges. We know that student enrollment is declining. Over the past 8 years, enrollment nationwide has declined and fallen 11%. In addition, across the country, more than 500 colleges and universities show warning signs in 2 or more metrics of the financial stress test. There are fewer high school graduates. The Clearinghouse reports a 22% decline in high school graduates compared to 2019. And competition is fierce. We know just within the online space, you have Southern New Hampshire University, Purdue Global, UMass Online, ASU, and many, many more. Not only are institutions broadening globally, but they're also creating these really competitive competency-based programs in targeting the non-traditional learner. In addition, companies are actually tapping into the education space where Amazon and Google are creating their own professional certifications. So it's really making traditional higher ed institutions difficult to be able to compete with the cost, with the brand. And so that's very scary, especially among traditional higher education. So with all that said, since 2016, there have been 35 closures and 30 mergers within the nonprofit sector. So I'm sure a lot of you on this call especially can relate to some of the challenges I just mentioned. So how are institutions responding? One is internal restructuring. This actually is a great way for institutions to be able to create more efficiencies and cost savings. Usually this term is referred to as right-sizing the institution. Another option is a merger or becoming acquired, which is what New England College of Business chose as their route. And then of course, the third, the dreaded, the one that we're all trying to avoid at all costs is of course the closure. So why would an institution want to merge? What are some of the benefits? What are some of the advantages of merging or becoming acquired? You have new student pipelines, diversified student body. You're also able to expand your academic portfolio. In addition, through centralized administration, you're gaining efficiencies and cost savings, and institutions may actually get assets such as endowments or access to a campus. For New England College of Business, we were a for-profit institution where we actually couldn't go to our alumni for donations, nor could we apply for research grants. And so by being acquired by a nonprofit institution, Cambridge College, we now have that ability to go to our alumni and also to apply for grants, which provided 2 new revenue streams for the institution. So just within New England, here are some creative consolidations, merger and acquisitions that are happening in our neck of the woods. So Connecticut State College will merge 12 state community colleges into one accredited institution. In addition, University of Bridgeport created a new academic administrative structure where the previous 14 deans in their divisions are now going to be consolidated under 3 deans reporting directly into the provost. And the rationale for this was to create more efficiencies within the academic domains and also to enhance the student experience. UMass recently announced its strategic partnership with Brandman University out on the West Coast, and they will soon launch UMass Global. And as we mentioned, Cambridge College recently acquired the for-profit New England College of Business to really increase its size and reach, and we've established New England Institute of Business at Cambridge College. So over the next few slides, I'm going to talk about how we were able to create a successful merge. Finding the right partner. I cannot stress enough how important this is. And this was one thing that New England College of Business and Cambridge College were committed to ensuring throughout the whole due diligence process that this was a good fit. Both institutions shared a similar mission and vision. Actually, funny enough, we had the same key words in both of our missions, which was to provide high quality, access, and affordability. In addition to, we were committed to assuring continuity. Our students were our primary focus. We wanted to ensure that it was a smooth transition from the start to finish so that we could really set them up for success of completing their programs. We decided to keep their academic curriculum the same. We did not alter the learning management system. And in addition, there was no changes to their tuition or their student support services. Beyond the continuity aspect, we created an integration team, which comprised of all departments from academics to technologies to student support services to financial aid, et cetera, where we were able to really come up with a thoughtful strategic plan on how to ensure that we could fully integrate between the technology, academic programs, and procedures. So one thing that Cambridge really made clear was not only to ensure the continuity and setting our students up for a smooth pathway of completion, but also to be able to preserve the legacy and the history of New England College of Business. So this is why we came about with creating the New England Institute of Business. Where with this new brand, we're able to recognize our history. We have 110 years of history educating the working adult. We're also able to continue to be recognized as the pioneer within online learning. And Cambridge College was really committed to preserving the culture and continuing with the student support, which is why they were able to absorb all of our staff and faculty. And lastly, they were able to have all of our corporate partners. New England College of Business has a long-standing history of recruitment through the corporate partnership channel, and they were able to acquire all of our partnerships and continue this model of recruitment. So throughout this transition, the one attribute that holds us together is our student-first mentality. We were able to commit to ensuring continuity for our existing students and really create a seamless pathway for them to complete. We were able to leverage and integrate into Cambridge College's technology system, which were certainly more robust and cutting edge than what we had. And in addition, we were able to enhance and provide additional student support resources to our students. And lastly, by bringing over all of our staff and faculty, we were able to continue with a really high touch student support model that we've always been committed to. So how do we know our students were able to transition smoothly? You can see over to the right there that on our 2020 survey, 98% of our students reported a seamless transition over to Cambridge College and felt fully supported by their academic advisor. So now I'd like to end with a video that was created by Cambridge College. And this video is a true sentiment of how Cambridge College has embraced NEIB and has folded us under their wing to be able to really thrive within this environment. So let's hope that we have technology on my side here. And let me see if I can, hang on one second. See if it will play here. Is everyone able to hear this?
No, we cannot hear it.
Oh, you cannot hear it? Hold on one second. Let me try one more thing here. Okay, let me try this here. Okay, let me know if this works now.
That works.
Invest in your future with a degree from New England Institute of Business at Cambridge College. Here are 5 reasons to choose us for your bachelor's or master's degree program. Reason number 1, trust. Business people have trusted New England Institute of Business since its founding as American Institute of Banking over a century ago. Today, New England Institute of Business is part of Cambridge College, a private nonprofit institution accredited by the New England Commission of Higher Education and a leader in adult learning. Reason number 2, flexibility. With our online platform, use your laptop, tablet, or smartphone to learn anywhere your busy schedule takes you.
I was looking for a program that was flexible with my schedule. I do work full-time. I have a full plate at home, a family.
Reason number 3, affordability.
I was looking for a college that was affordable, that was accredited, that I could fit into my schedule, and they were just the perfect fit for that.
Reason number 4, awards. New England Institute of Business is recognized nationally for its bachelor's and master's degree programs and for innovations in online learning technologies. Reason number 5, results. 99% of our graduates say that our technology helped them learn.
This environment is very similar to the way people are really communicating now. You get to understand how to work within that environment, how to understand the language of communication through technology. And this online platform does just that.
46% have already advanced in their careers. What else do our graduates say?
Yes, I have been advanced and promoted, not only in my full-time job in the healthcare industry, but also in my government responsibility as a National Guard officer.
98% say they are performing better at work.
I personally work on a team of 8 people in-house, and I think that the group projects that I underwent really led me to take charge and take leadership even at my work on my team.
98% said their needs were met by faculty and staff.
The instructors really wanted to be one-on-one and get to know you and what you wanted, so that they could kind of cater the class and what you were learning to what your goals were. I had never had that before, and it was very important for me.
Those are just 5 of the reasons to choose New England Institute of Business at Cambridge College to advance your business career. Visit our website to learn more.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for taking the time to listen, and I'll turn it over to Philip.
Thanks. Very pleased, many thanks. I'd love to be able to say that I'm pleased to be with you. I suppose I am, in a sense. Through my mind is going the Bruce Springsteen song, Born in the USA. I'd love to be able to sing Born in the USE, the United States of Europe, but unfortunately that type of political cohesion isn't as sort of important as in the United States. And you'll see that in many ways has been a challenge for business schools throughout Europe. So although I'm not physically with you, Bruce Springsteen will help me to imagine that I am with you. The reason I'm going to talk to you, to Philip McLaughlin, I used to be the executive director of 3 major French business schools, and I was on the accreditation boards of Equus, EFMD, and at the moment I'm on the board of AMBA BGA, and AMBA has been extremely important in my own life as a dean, because it's from the very beginning, probably 20 years ago, I think they were the first accreditation agency to come in and give helping us to get accreditation for the MBAs at the time. So it's paying back a debt, I think, by taking part in this type of workshop. So my talk will be, I'll try and give you a behind the scenes look at what happened when 2 business schools in France, Euromed, which is a business school based in Marseille, and BEM, the school that I was the executive director and dean of in Bordeaux, with campuses elsewhere, decided to merge. It was an extremely intense period, which lasted something like 15 months. And quite honestly, at the end of it, people were tired. I left, and it was successful. It is successful 5 years on. But there was a human price to pay. There was a certain amount of dissatisfaction, a certain amount of tension. So you certainly shouldn't underestimate that. I mean, I will give you a relatively optimistic vision, But if you are thinking of going through a merger, even merging departments, you find similar problems. So I think you've got to be very aware, very lucid, and I think Caitrin talked about on the YouTube video the whole question of trust. It's very, very important to try and work. How do you define trust? What are the bases of trust, and what can you do to ensure that you don't let people down, that you don't betray them either unwittingly or, alas, at times wittingly. So that will be why I'd like to talk to you about this merger. I think it will also give you an insight into the dynamics of Europe, and perhaps it will also enable you or encourage you to send more students to Europe. Now, my own experience of the United States is, as I said, I was on the ACSB for 3 years, and I also set up a fully harmonized program with Northeastern University in Boston, and there are currently 9 schools or 13 schools throughout the world in this international partnership of business schools. And creating this fully harmonized program, we encountered similar problems. Legal requirements, accreditation, reassuring people that they were going to be able to continue working in a convivial atmosphere, that if we were validating courses taught in Boston, that wasn't going to undermine courses taught in France. So similar challenges, whether they be creating fully harmonized programs or creating mergers or fusions. So we're going to move on to, this is what I love, next slide, Victor. Thank you. So this will give you an idea of French business schools. There's a long history. In the French system, if you ever come to France or send students, it's a two-sided system. On the one hand, you have public universities, and on the other hand, you have universities are non-profit. There's something like 38 non-profit business schools that are normally connected to French chambers of commerce. Now, French chambers of commerce are not sort of social clubs for retired business people or where they talk about golf. Chambers of commerce in France have a certain amount of political and economic power. I think that's important. And they all set up business schools. And so the earliest business school was the European School of Business in Paris, which was created in 1819. But Euromed was founded in 1872 and BEM in 1873. They were initially created to be regional training schools, and they were very well financed because of an apprenticeship tax system in France. However, a number of years ago, politicians started to say, well, why should we let the chambers of commerce control airports? Why should we let them control local regional development? Why should we let them control business schools? We should start getting involved. So they started to reduce the public financing of chambers of commerce, which had a knock-on effect, which meant that, and that explains one of the reasons why business schools merge, it had a knock-on effect on financing. The emergence of rankings and accreditation, so AACSB, AMBA, and EQUIS, really had a major impact on strategic dynamics. When I started teaching in a French business school 30 years ago, there was very little need to do research. And the universities would bitterly complain, oh, send us your students. Nobody does research in the French Chamber of Commerce business schools. Unfortunately for the universities, the companies just didn't care. They didn't want people to do research. They were looking for students who passed a highly competitive entrance examination and were able to work quickly in a company. However, the emergence of rankings and accreditation basically put the pressure on business schools to move towards research. So over the space of 30 years, I piloted a number of schools where this was a major issue. How could you respectfully help faculty who had not been recruited to do research, but were excellent teachers with solid consultancy experience to move towards research? It's a non-problem now because those teachers have left, have retired, and the whole dynamic is towards satisfying accreditation criteria in terms of research. And I think the other movement, which, as I said, is the real movement that characterizes the past 20-odd years in France, is the movement from regional trade schools. It's a little bit of an exaggeration, but basically it was towards a national positioning. So people wanted to ensure that they had contacts in Paris, etc. Towards internationalization. So generally you would sign agreements with schools throughout Europe. And then now it really is global presence. Why? Well, Caitrin very perfectly did what I wished I'd have done. It was a very clear introduction of why. I won't remind you of all of the factors that force us to merger, but it's shrinking of recruitment pools, it's portfolios, all of the things that you very brilliantly outlined. That all goes for me, which meant that we had to go further and further abroad. French business schools had to go further and further abroad. So first it was in Europe. So first we did set up a campus in Paris, then it was, well, Paris isn't enough, let's set up a campus in America, let's set up a campus in Brazil. So this is now a global presence. And I think one of the big differences that we have with United States schools, which perhaps explains as well, perhaps different approaches, we probably are more concerned with languages, because obviously, although we may offer classes in English, you still have to offer quite a number of courses in German, in French, or whatever. So there's a certain concern with language proficiency. That seems to be an important part of the business school education. Multiculturalism as well, for obvious reasons. How do people in Finland think? Do people in Finland think? That was just to get Henrik to laugh. And the whole question of international activities. And the basic one is, for all the reasons that Caitrin said, why move towards mergers? Well, to obtain competitive advantages, not so much to survive in the French system, although a number of schools have left the market. A number of failed mergers have taken place, and certain schools have lost and have closed, or have reduced significantly their activities. But in the case of Kedge and BEM, that wasn't the case. It was really, what could we do? Now, if you look at the map, we're quite far apart. It's something like it's an hour and a half. It's not so much for the regional socio-economic factors. It was really, let's see how we can move abroad and have a global presence. So basically, BEM was based in Africa, and Euromed was very strongly based in China. And so we decided to build on that and see what we could do. So that is an indication of why we decided to merge. We can move on, I think. So just this very quickly, to give you an idea, again, we're coming back to what Caitrin said. We were quite similar. Students in BEM in 2012, 3,513, 5,700 in Euromed. Foreign students, 327, 1,350. That was because of China. You can see they were much more capable in terms of internationalization. Faculty, pretty similar, 75, 89, full-time. Foreign faculty, again, no major differences, 26, 32. Budgets, 33 million euros for BEM and 50 million for Euromed. But it's quite interesting what we talked about trust. Once we'd announced that, Euromed, for example, they thought they were going to impress my faculty. But of course, my faculty were all zooming on internet to realize that, well, it wasn't really 50 million, because our budget was 33 million, but profit, because we were selling good programs. The 50 million from Euromed was because they had bigger subsidies from the Chamber of Commerce. So what was seemingly a factual element was negatively interpreted at times. So you've got to be very certain about how even facts will be interpreted. I was very surprised. One of the first reactions I got was somebody coming in saying, this is bluff, don't have anything. I said, yes, the budget is 50 million. Yes, but it's not like our 33 million. Campuses, again, not many changes. The research budget, 2.7 million, 4.7 million. Once again, once we started grating and scratching behind the surface, the difference was not that significant. But, again, they did have more money to spend. And in terms of research stars, this is in the French system, well, we were comparable. We had 57 stars in terms of research output, and Euromed had 2012. So that's where we are. And I think the next one we can look. Now, my background is in literature. I think I was the very only dean and executive director never to have studied business, thank God. And I had actually a doctorate in literature, and I found this was an amazing help to me, because faculty actually loved it, because they said, oh, you're not going to get involved in defending the accountants, or you're not going to get involved in defending the market people. And what I did was I moved up. I started as head of corporate relations, head of communication, and I moved up. And when I became executive director, I just asked every single faculty member to come in and explain to me, talked me what accountancy is all about. Why should I even have an hour of accountancy? Tell me, I'm an idiot. And it just helped me to have an overview. Now that also helped me, my way of handling the merger. Because basically I realized, we started quite quickly to have consultants. Now consultants all come in with Porter, strategic analysis. And it all becomes extremely technical and quite overwhelming. And every single strategy faculty member wanted to tell me how to organize the merger. So I thought I've got to give myself a little roadmap just to help me to understand, to keep focused. So I thought, well, I'm just going to pretend that a merger is writing a story with a happy ending. And I thought, okay, what does that mean for me? And again, this is just my view. It was shared past stories. And again, as Caitrin said in more sort of formal language, I looked at what we'd done together in the past. And I could see our history was the same, our recruitment tactics, our approach to learning. We had similar stories. So there was a legacy that we could build on. There were no major sort of disruptive ruptures. Compatible positioning, vision, intentions. We found similar words in our mission statements, in our vision, similar accreditation journeys. We then moved towards understanding each other. Now, a major thing that we did was we agreed that each school would send an independent team of auditors to fully audit each school. So we received auditors sent by Marseille who had a week going through everything, our accounts, everything. And we did the same with an independent set of auditors. They had no influence on what was produced. Those reports were then given to our two chambers of commerce, and we then could compare. And we tried to smooth over any, in inverted commas, narrative difficulties. What was happening in terms of a narrative? What was our portfolio? Where would there be problems with the portfolio? We had a wine MBA. They were in creative thinking and design. How could we sort of reconcile those? And then a solid, well-constructed plot. It was very, very important for me to give, because people were very worried. And we'll come back to why. People were worried because staff didn't have similar salaries, staff didn't have similar approaches to holidays, they didn't have the similar healthcare. It was very, very complicated. So we had to reassure people and give them a clear sequence to say, we intend to be here by such and such a date. We intend to be there by such and such a date. We intend to answer those questions by such and such a date. And so we have this sequence planning and an authorial vision. Now, what does that mean? All that means is it was organic. I don't think I've ever consulted so many people in my life. I mean, we had platforms, blogs, committees, frequently asked questions. We really did. I mean, I was looking through my notes before. There were so many meetings with the trade unions, etc. And I set up a group of people, not experts, and it was a mixture of, because often in these type of situations, we only ask the faculty. I mean, it's quite interesting that in business schools, we talk about inclusive management, but when you go to some business schools, it's the faculty and the administration are sort of, in inverted commas, neglected. I set out to have committees where we mixed faculty with people from the technical departments, people who didn't have an education, because they could still react. It was going to be their new home. And I wanted people with their words, in their way, to express their fears. It helped faculty to better understand administrators, and it helped administrators to understand faculty. And once again, I'm not talking about top-level administrators. I'm not just talking about top-level faculty. We tried to have a diverse mix. And so we had a committee that reviewed things, outside of the blogs and the official committees, and they would then say, this is what we think about it. And then the other one was the brand. We wanted to ensure that the brand, because there was a great deal of resistance. The Chamber of Commerce in France, business schools are linked to Chambers of Commerce. So the Chambers of Commerce, although they wanted the mergers, they kept thinking naively that, well, Bordeaux would be the name that would be chosen. And people in Marseille thought, no, that's okay. Let them get on with it. We want that, but we know that they're going to choose, Marseille. Well, in fact, we didn't. We chose Kedge, and which went down well. I think you can go to the next one. Opportunities. Well, again, we're going to find some of the things that Caitrin was talking about. Similar schools, market positioning, size, culture, values, educational approaches, accreditations, and any differences, we could transform them into marketable opportunities. So there were some differences, you know, we had a general master program, we had a portfolio of specialized master programs, they had a different approach to specialized masters. So we worked on all of that to ensure that, because, you know, one of the questions is, would the market react well to a new school? Because, you know, you're leaving, the brands were from 1872 and 1873. We were going to say to the public, forget all that now, it's Kedge. And in the context of France, there had been a number of, there was one famous merger that completely failed. France Business School, it failed. There were 3 or 4 good schools. I can remember Clermont, Brest, and it failed. It just went out. And the schools took many years to sort of get beyond that failure. So we had to ensure that we could maintain, we could survive and advance. So from the outset, there were no credibility gaps. We wanted to achieve a critical mass, as you said yourself, Caitrin, in terms of student-faculty ratio. We wanted to ensure that we could boost our research output, improve our corporate relations, and the quality of our service quality. And we also obviously wanted economies of scale, portfolio rationalization, and to end sterile competition, because in the French system, the flagship program is one generous master program. Because in the French system, when you take the equivalent of your leaving certificate at the age of 18, you can either go to university with the baccalaureate, or you can take what we call a 2-year program to prepare the competitive examination of my type of business school. And at the end of those 2 years, you pass a national competitive examination. Now, there's something like 7,000 candidates for maybe, I don't know, maybe now even 6,000 or 7,000 places. So everyone will practically get in, but it's the ranking order. The best ones will go to Paris and you go down. Okay, so we were competing, spending lots of money on promotion and communication. In fact, for very little differences in terms of student quality. We were recruiting at the same level. So we thought we should rationalize that money and perhaps open up other programs. You know, as the pond to fish for this competitive examination is limited, we thought, let's stop competing. You know, we were saying to students, come to Marseille or come to Bordeaux, and they'd spend 2 days with us. They'd spend a lot of money. They had to pay to join, to apply for us. And in the end, they had the choice between us. And we really thought we could become global. You know, global. As I said, we were in Dakar, we were in Senegal, and Marseille was very present in China. We thought we can actually become global, and we have since then. We wanted a brand. We wanted a stronger governance, less attached to the policies and challenges of the Chambers of Commerce. As I explained, one of our problems was that, you know, my own position as executive director and dean, I was a member of the executive committee of the Chamber of Commerce. Which meant that I had to present my school at the General Assembly every month of the Chambers of Commerce, which meant that every month, you know, in terms of protocol, I had to pretend that the elected member who I didn't report to, but who I was supposed to report to, presented my school. Now, when I was recruited, I said, I will come, but I'm not having any elected member present the school. I will do that. But having said that, I was a member of the executive committee, and a lot of time was spent on other issues other than the school. So this was a way also of moving away from that. And I had a very supportive Chamber of Commerce, but some schools don't have or didn't have supportive Chambers of Commerce. So there is a tendency now in France for schools to sort of free themselves from Chambers of Commerce. I was lucky. Bordeaux was a very, very good Chamber of Commerce and helped the school enormously. And the last one was quite simple. We had decided that we were maybe 8th or 9th in terms of rankings out of 37 schools, and we wanted to move up. That has not really been achieved. It has been achieved in program rankings. It has been achieved in certain programs, but in terms of the ranking of the business schools in general, it's had a slight effect. We're in the top 10, which is good, and we're maybe 7th or 8th as opposed to 9th or 10th. But you know, it's not been an amazing result. But I think that was a misguided objective anyway. It's like when you go to business school. All business schools want to be in the top 25 in the world. You know, at some stage you've got to ask yourself, is that a reasonable objective? But we are better in program rankings, so that has been well achieved. And I think we are in the top circle, clearly. I think before the merger, we were in the top 10, but we slipped every now and then. Now we're pretty stable. I think it's 7th or 8th. Let's go for it, Victor. Challenges. Now you notice I put the very first word, surviving. I said jokingly before, when I told my daughter I was doing this talk, she said, oh, that's good. She said, you're going to type in how to get rid of 2 general directors in the space of 12 months. Because basically, that is in fact what happened. And it was all very nice negotiated between lawyers and things. But I mean, it's obvious that at some stage, for political reasons, they were going to want to bring in new people who didn't have this sense of fidelity to Marseille or to Bordeaux. I mean, you can wrap it up as you like, but that level of engagement, that was a part of the game. And then, you'll see the other question is that, so that I think is an important issue. And that question of survival is, for me, is essential in any sort of merger, whether it be a merger between departments. I have managed schools where we've merged departments, where we put strategy in with another one or whatever. And there are always these risks that you phase people out, you demotivate people. So you've got to help people to survive. You've got to help people to realize that even though they may have a different place in the organizational structure, you must try and present that in a meaningful way for them. Because otherwise, I mean, when accreditations came out, that was one of my clear obsessions. When AACSB started to come in 15, 20 years ago, I had faculty who were getting extreme praise in school evaluations, student evaluations, but they were worried because they hadn't done any research. And they were coming in heartbroken. They were coming in sad. They were 50-odd years old. They'd never done research, but they had great contact with companies. And they were saying, what am I going to do? I can't produce an article. And there's AACSB coming in with scholarly academic. You have to be a scholarly academic. You had to help these people. So you've got to help people survive. You've got to give them a way forward. The other challenge was to ensure that the market wanted a new school. So obviously we did market research. How would people react to the merger? Would people give it credibility? So we did a whole series of market opportunities. The other major challenge I thought that I was pretty good at fast reading and processing information, but it was just so tiring. I mean, we had constant contact with the accreditation agencies, with consultants. We had 2 sets of consultants who all came with consultancy language. It's like, they don't speak English, they speak consultancy language. So we had to get our head around that. We had to deal with the lawyers, all of these questions of due diligence. The lawyers but we had 2 separate lawyer companies working for Marseille. 4. We had to deal with the state. What does the state minister of education think about this? What are the difficulties that they see? We had to also deal with trade unions. Very, very difficult. Very, very difficult. Because basically, there were going to be losses. I mean, there were going to be losses. Teaching hours were not valued in the same way in one school as in the other. The number of holidays per year was not the same. Health benefits, perks, bonuses, all sorts of difficulties that we hadn't anticipated. The trade unions anticipated them. And it was very, very difficult. We had to convince participants and stakeholders. We had to create trust. Now, to give you an anecdote, which is quite nice, at one stage we decided that we'd keep the project highly confidential. So we came up with a name for the project. And the name for the project was Project Kiwi. Okay, so you're thinking, where is he taking us? Well, I'm taking you to the following. That when we asked Marseille and Bordeaux to produce the first document, their document on Project Kiwi, one school produced the kiwi eating the kiwi. The other school produced just the kiwi, the fruit. Okay? So what that meant was that the school that had just put the fruit on the top of their presentation, immediately I had, you see, they're going to eat us, they're going to absorb us. You see how aggressive they are? That's what it's all about. So, even a simple the choice of a confidential term became a source of distrust. So that is very, very, very important. So we had numerous platforms for dialogue. I was walking around all the time, meeting people. I was in my office at 6:30. I was leaving at 8 at night. We were doing amphitheaters, constantly answering questions. We set up a blog where we guaranteed we would give an answer within the space of 3 days, which is not bad. No matter how complex the question, we would give an answer, even a tentative one. So we try our best. Then, of course, we had to harmonize the nuts and bolts. And I say the nuts and bolts is the business plan. Basically, all of the business plan, the portfolio, finance, fees, etc. And creating an appropriate organizational structure, handling individual institutional egos and power bases. It opens up, again, another title I was thinking about giving for this merger, but I'm not that pessimistic, would be, there's a film which I can't remember, it's called Gravestone or something like that. I can't remember the name. I was looking for it. Anyway, in French, it was Small Murders Amongst Friends, because that was what was happening. People were taking the opportunity. I'd find out that such and such a person had gone down to the Chamber of Commerce to say, well, I could become executive director. There's an opportunity. So you've got to be aware that you also open up threats for people, but quite rightly, you give opportunities to people. People are going to position themselves. So you have to try and understand that and respect that. I didn't live that type of initiative as a betrayal. I think it's quite normal. On the one hand, you say to people, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. You may have your job maybe change. So people started to look, but you have to create an organizational structure that help. If the former head of such and such a department, how could you handle that person's ego? We spent an enormous amount of time on defining the 2 executive director positions, because it was clear that both myself and my colleague from Marseille, we were going to be number 1 and number 2. That was clear for political reasons. So in the end, it was politically who would do what. So there was much negotiation between the human resource people and the lawyers. Well, if you give that power to that director, okay, politically we understand, but that means that that person politically, you're dissing. So all that was complicated. It took a long time. And I think that was basically what happened. In the end, the merger went well. Quite a number of people, there was a certain amount of turnover, there was a certain amount of dissatisfaction. We started in March 2012. I think in May 2013, everything had been signed. The director from Marseille was appointed executive director, and I was appointed vice executive director. The director from Marseille lasted 6 months and left. And so then I was appointed. But I was appointed, and the background was I was appointed, and it was quite clearly, said politically, we think your Chamber of Commerce got rid of, so don't count on a future with us. Let's negotiate how we can handle, your leaving, which is fine. Again, this is classic. In lower levels, nobody else was menaced. There were 1 or 2 people who left, but by and large, it was quite successful. Since then, there have been people, there have been people still leaving. It's been quite a turnover at executive director level, so it's quite clear that there is still a tension between both sides. Not as far as students are concerned, it works very well. Student satisfaction is high, but I think that there's still fine-tuning in terms of governance, because the 2 schools are quite far apart, which maybe Caitrin didn't have that problem. The problem I think with Kedge would be that unless it is decided clearly that the executive team will be based in Paris and will handle Marseille and Bordeaux from Paris, if they decide, we'll have our executive director in Marseille, obviously Bordeaux will be complaining. If they decide to have it in Bordeaux. So I think that's my personal view. It may be an issue, but maybe it won't. But by and large, it was an extremely satisfying process. I think it was done with caution. I think we tried to do as best as we could. Staff, faculty, and administrators were pleased with the result. And then since then, well, they've gone up. The strategic plan, I'm still in contact, has been achieved. The school is doing well in ranking. It's doing well in terms of recruitment. So I think it was very much a success, although there were some small problems after. Thank you. I think that's it, Victor. Unless I'm mistaken.
No, thank you so much, Philip. That's fantastic. A really great presentation from both you and Caitrin. Thank you so much. And now is actually an opportunity for people in the audience to ask their questions. I have a screen open here so I can basically see the questions coming in. In the meantime, I'll bring up some questions that have been coming up on my end and see what you guys. Sorry, Philip, say that again.
You get rid of the slides.
Oh yes, of course. Let's see here. There we go. Fantastic. So let's take up an example. Let's say you're a business school in the Midwest right now in the U.S. and you're in a position where you're looking for a merger with another school. What would be kind of the first few steps for this school to find and identify a school that could, let's say, make a successful merger? I mean, what kind of qualities should you look for? What issues should you be aware of in this early stage? And I'll open it up to you guys to see who wants to go first.
Is this for Caitrin, is it? Yeah.
Well, Caitrin, do you want to go
Sure,
first?
I'm happy to jump in. So I think, when you're going into a situation and you're looking at, what is that perfect fit? What a potential successful merger look like? I know I mentioned some of those briefly, and Philip also reinforced it, is that, you're looking at what their mission is, what are their values, if you can align in that area, because it's all about creating trust and then of course proving credibility. And so I think if you go into a situation where you're at least aligned within the same mission, similar student demographic, student body, similar values, I think that that's kind of the foundation of it. But and one thing that I didn't mention is some of the challenges that we encountered, which of course I painted a very happy picture because it has been this very successful merge. But I think the clear differential is that Cambridge acquired us as looking at us as an asset. So we were, prior to joining Cambridge, we were 100% online institution here in Boston, Massachusetts. We actually did not have any on-ground programs. So that was a clear differential for us. We had a very similar student demographic where Cambridge historically has always had the working adult population. So did, coincidentally, New England College of Business. So the student demographic fit really well. And as I mentioned, we had very similar missions, which is providing access, high quality, and affordable degree programs. But Cambridge truly acquired an asset where we were able to keep ourselves separate, which is why we established New England Institute of Business at Cambridge College. And they've done an incredible job with recognizing our differences, recognizing our different processes academically and through online delivery. And they've been able to embrace that and be able to allow us to flourish and continue to thrive, because that is really our expertise, is online education. So I think that, having similar values, mission, but also having Cambridge acquire a big asset, which is the online channel in online programs, has really helped us immensely with creating such a successful merge.
I think that's a very interesting point. See, that wouldn't have worked in our system, because from the very outset, neither of the schools wanted to become an asset acquired by the other. So I think that's a very important point. You've got to decide what type of merger are you looking for. We were also involved. I was also involved in looking at another smaller French business school not far away from Bordeaux, and my brief was to bring them into the merger. I won't reveal the name of the school. Very good school, but it was discovered that in fact the gap was a little bit too large in terms of national positioning and in terms of sort of the approach to innovation and finance, that it would have been perceived as an acquisition. And that in the dynamics of the Kedge merger, the acquisition probably wouldn't have been implemented with a great deal of tenderness. So, it was decided not to pursue it. It probably wouldn't have been good for Kedge or for the other school.
I think there are, if I can briefly mention, I think here are two grand examples. Kedge, of course, of an international aspect and how you have been able to globalize from there, and then of course build that platform, and then of course also a regional merger or acquisition where you kind of build on the regional assets. And of course Halt is also in the category of internationalization and seeking a global kind of presence from this kind of joint. And I think when I look on a Midwestern school, I think the question is, of course, what is the underlying need and what is the desire? Is the desire to become stronger regionally, or is the desire to become strong internationally? And that, of course, will set the footing for the steps ahead. And then I think it's really important to think about things that both Philip and Caitrin have been mentioning, thinking about the mission, thinking about the underlying culture and the strategic ambitions of the two schools. And I think very early you need to somehow define who is the stronger party and who is bringing what to the table, and then start kind of bringing that together. And I think the secrecy of Philip's case initially, and then of course full transparency when that's possible, and build trust among all the stakeholders. And of course the stakeholders are within the institution, but there are so many important stakeholders around, and I think that came also very clearly through, and those need to be taken into consideration very early, so that you actually align the steps forward, so that everyone's kind of supporting in the way they can to the extent possible what lies ahead.
We at the beginning, again at the very beginning, it was decided that there was a personal relationship between myself and the director of Marseille. So we said, look, in terms of trust, you give me all of your accreditation reports, ACSB, AMBA, EQUIS, and I'll give you mine. I guarantee confidentiality. You do the same, and you don't give them to your colleagues. And we sit down and we have a talk about it. And that was the first sign of trust, because people don't generally reveal their accreditation reports. So that was quite good. There was no problem. We both did it, sent them off, had a full day's meeting talking about it, and there was that trust that was established.
So then taking that a little bit further, let's talk about the due diligence process, because obviously this is it's an immense step, a lot of different parts to look at. What do you guys, perhaps Caitrin wants to start first, what was some of the most important factors of your due diligence that you had to look at, that you had to meet for it to even be considered, a successful acquisition or merger in the future?
Sure. So I think everyone who's actually gone through that due diligence process can all sympathize and understand how exhausting it is and how time consuming, especially because once you get to the point of potentially entering a merger or acquisition, your resources are exhausted or they're very limited at this point. So that I remember just myself being really challenged with being able to produce the data, go through the legal process, consultants, as we all are very aware of. So I think that it's almost like, this is the meeting of the minds, is you're going through all of your documents, your enrollment trends, what they've been over the last few years, looking at, your revenue or lack thereof. And so it's really trying to understand both economically, academically, also culturally, the different institutions. And so I think that one thing that, and I would recommend, at least from my point of view, one thing that Cambridge did really well with is similar to the culture of NECB, is we really went at this as a student first experience. We always looked at what's in the best interest of the student versus how is someone doing something their way at one of the institutions. So we always were driven towards the student first mentality, which helped immensely. And I think that the other key component that was really, really helpful throughout the whole due diligence process is that Cambridge was able to absorb all of our staff and faculty. So the students coming over to be taught out were very familiar with, continued with their same academic advisor, their same student financial planner, their same faculty. So the familiarity that they transitioned over to was as smooth as possible. So I think that while it was a grueling process, it was very beneficial to get to understand both institutions and really making informed decisions on looking at what's in the best interest of our students.
Can I ask a question here? I've seen many mergers outside of the education world, and it always strikes me that there's no such thing as an equal merger. There's either an acquirer and acquired, or you're kidding yourself, it's an equal merger. What advice would you give to schools out there today where they look at others and think we are very equal? This needs to work on a purely democratic 50-50 basis. Is that possible, or is it much easier when both sides agree that one is the acquirer and one is the acquired?
Philip, do you want to start with that one?
Yeah, I can only talk from my experience. There were two chambers of commerce in the French system with a similar sense of their importance and a similar sense of we are better than. It was quite clear that it was going to be a long process with lots of coming and going about who would do what, but it was always going to be a question of equals at the outset. However, there were times during the process when you saw on my initial figures, Marseille was slightly richer in terms of resources. The Chamber of Commerce was slightly bigger. The regional area is slightly more powerful. There was a tendency at times to sort of treat it as an acquisition, and that was the sense of my anecdote about the Kiwi. When we had this secret name for the project, we decided to call it the Kiwi Project. And Bordeaux, we were the fruit. Somebody had just put on our project the fruit, the kiwi. And on the Marseille one, it was the bird eating the kiwi eating the kiwi. So immediately, but we fought against that. Towards the end, again, you're right, Andrew, towards the end, it did become slightly political. And we then did move into a political mindset where, one Chamber of Commerce did try to. But having said that, the whole question of governance is very, very much 50-50. So in the end, I don't think it was an acquisition. I think they argued and they got the lawyers coming in, the statutes that were defined, all ensure, complementary 50-50 input. That also did imply certain exchange of money and a certain, there was whole questions about what money was put in and how could this Chamber of Commerce dispose of this money, because there were fears that money that used to be put into some schools would be lost because of the French state system. Oh, if you don't have one school anymore, you might lose that money. So a lot of time was spent due diligence, making sure that public subsidies were not lost or fiscal leniency was not lost. I mean, it was very complicated, and that was, I relied on consultants to help me with that.
I think, Andrew, it's extremely rare that a merger or an acquisition, but merger especially, would be completely balanced. And I think probably for the benefit of the merger, there is someone who takes direction. But at the same time, I think there are a lot of assets that both parties bring to the table. And if I look, for example, on the Halt Ashridge operational merger and how they brought them together, one school was very active and engaged with executives and executive education and research, and Halt again was very active in degree programs. So that kind of allowed us to bring the best sides of each institution into one. And alone we would have been weaker. Together we were stronger than each body alone. So in that sense, I think that's kind of the mentality. And then, of course, if you look on some kind of famous mergers that are beyond business schools, like Aalto University, what they brought together was a design school, a technical school, and a business school. And then, of course, the question is at the end, who is leading is kind of secondary, because the mix is so unique, and they kind of created a competitive space for themselves by bringing together this very diverse mix of entities.
Good point.
Yeah, you've also got, so I mentioned one of the mergers in France that failed terribly. And it was because I think that there was not sufficient due diligence given to an important issue. The issue is very simple. In the French system, credibility is above all given in terms of your capacity, not to offer MBAs, not to offer bachelor programs, but to satisfy this national competitive entrance examination that determines whether you can get into the general master's program. The school may only recruit 20, it doesn't matter, it's just where are they in the rankings? And this school, which was France Business School, they decided that they would be very innovative. We don't need this national competitive examination. We will go totally and utterly outside the mainstream. It didn't work. And it didn't work. Financially, they didn't need that necessarily, but just in terms of credibility, it destroyed them, because people said, well, if they don't want to recruit even 20 students, in this way, that must mean there are problems. So the public didn't understand it. So I think that was a problem, for the school. The due diligence is you've really got to identify the key success factors and make sure you've got them right. And in our case, the due diligence was not so much for the market and students. We understood that. It was all the background. It was the governance. It was the public subsidies. It was how would the social security react? How would the trade unions react? It was all the hidden parts of the iceberg, generally managed by the administrative and financial directors. My administrative and financial director, when I used to go into a meeting, she'd say to me, oh, you got a great job. You can say yes, and then you rely on me to say no after. Because, the role of the executive director is not necessarily to have all of the details, it's the vision. But that in a merger, you really need the people who handle the finances and the legal aspects. Otherwise, very good point.
I liked a lot something that Philip was saying earlier, just quick comment, and it goes back to, of course, Caitrin also being in the same regulatory space with the two institutions, and in your case, the role and responsibility of regulators and accreditors, and that gives us a great basis for due diligence and understanding how similar and different we are. I think those reports are immensely important in a mergers and acquisition situation, and it helps us to actually get a third-party view, which is kind of separate from the time when this is active, this negotiation. I really enjoy that comment, and I think it's relevant for all of us to recognize that.
Yeah, and that could even be, I don't know whether, sometimes, we ask consultants, but perhaps I don't know whether AMBA, Equus or the others, but that might be even for schools who don't have those accreditations. That could be also a way forward, that those agencies say, well, we can provide a one-off comparative study of both institutions, and the same criteria. That can be very useful. Okay, you're not going for accreditation, that's fine, but we'll come in and we'll apply the same criteria to you and to you. It'll be totally confidential. We'll give you the reports, handle it as you do, as you wish, rather than going to external consultants.
That's very interesting. Yeah.
Caitrin, you mentioned how you were able to basically keep the student experience unchanged. How were you guys able to do that? Because obviously there might be the one who's acquiring or the one who's you're merging with. Regardless, there might always be some other influence to change things, or well, we could try this, and that will inevitably change the student experience. So just wondering from your experience, how were you guys able to keep the student experience as if nothing was going on in the background?
Sure. Well, I think, it goes without saying it was a lot of work. And when I say that, it's because there was commitment on both ends, and it started really from the top down. So the president, President Jackson, is just amazing. She really has just been so warm, welcoming, and has really embraced New England College of Business and has been able to really fold us under her wing, which has been really, really nice. And she values the student experience immensely. And so I think it really started from the top and trickled down, and with recognizing not only online is different. And so one thing that Philip had in his presentation that I loved that you said was market complementary differences. Learn how to do that. And I think that, Cambridge obviously is our master brand, and New England College of Business folded under that. But the one thing that has been committed from Cambridge is to recognize and to appreciate our differences. And that really is with curriculum. Our tuition did not align. Our learning management system. They had at most a few hybrid programs, and they were utilizing Genzabar, so we didn't even have the same learning management system. So I think that from the administration standpoint, they were committed to ensuring our students were set up successfully and being able to create a seamless pathway for them to complete. And so we chose to keep all of our systems, all of our curriculum, our tuition, our staff, our faculty, without as little change as possible. And that's really worked out. As I said in our presentation, 98% of our students felt they were fully supported through this transition. So the most probably helpful thing I can say is try to focus on the students, try to ensure a very seamless pathway for them to complete, and keep everything as consistent as possible. And that's what we were able to do.
Henrik, Philip, do you guys want to add on whether you guys had any challenges in terms of the student experience when the merger and acquisition happened?
Yeah, well, I think saying what Caitrin said, she's quite right. Basically, as with you, there were no major issues in terms of the seamlessness of the journey, because we had a portfolio which, there were no major problems. But there was one issue that was a problem, because basically in the French system for this, once again coming back to this flagship program, the regulations, when we were operating separately, we were competing with Marseille. Marseille was competing with us, and we have in the French system, we can identify the matches, or so we can say out of 200 candidates, 150 preferred Marseille to Bordeaux, or if you're competing with Rouen or other towns, we can actually say, when that student was given a place from Bordeaux, of 50 students who were offered a place by Bordeaux or Marseille or Paris, 35 chose to go to another school. Okay, so before the merger, basically anyone who was offered Bordeaux or Marseille, the majority of students would choose Bordeaux. Not because of education, but because basically Bordeaux had a better reputation as a town. The Marseille campus was further out, all sorts of, but it was decided, I'd advised against it. It was decided by the governments to reinforce the brand. No, we're going to give students that possibility. And I said, look, I think for a transitional period, you could keep separate admissions. So even though it's Kedge, we should make them choose at the moment of entering the examination, that they choose whether they come to Bordeaux or Marseille. And it was, no, we've got to keep, well, what happened was the very first year, Marseille was practically empty for this program because they all wanted to come to Bordeaux. So it took 2 or 3 years for that to sort of, so it was a mistake in the sense, not in the sense of a loss of money, because the money was coming into both Kedge, but it was a loss in the sense that it demotivated faculty and staff in Marseille because they had less students. And that, I had anticipated that, and for all sorts of reasons, it was, we did what the governance wanted us to do, and it reinforced the brand. But it was pretty difficult for a year or two until we started to make sure that students did, understand that Marseille, the school was not that far out, that there was very good reasons to come to Marseille, that it wasn't less of an experience, etc. And it was nothing to do with the quality of the courses, far from it.
Yeah, I think from our perspective, the schools were not overlapping too much in their student bodies. One, Ashridge catering more to executives and adult learners, and then HALT more to undergraduate and graduate students. So in that sense, the overlap perhaps was in London area with the HALT's EMBA and MBA program and Ashridge, but the overlap wasn't significant. And what we did was we thought out all the programs in that region that merged into to the HALT experience, and then still today a lot of the Ashridge programs remain geared as they've been before. So I think from a student perspective, this was foremost, I would say, an exciting opportunity to get from an Ashridge perspective a global campus network with campuses in Dubai, Shanghai, and then of course in London and Boston and San Francisco. And from a HALT perspective, I think the rigor of research and of course the promise of accreditations and so forth.
Wonderful. Let's talk a little bit about faculty integration, because that's an interesting one. Caitrin, you may have mentioned it a little bit. Philip, you mentioned it as well. that it was the issue of faculty. You know, you have your research stars, and then you have people with different experiences, and there might even be competing people on both sides. You know, and how do you then deal with two separate cultures, and how do you integrate them? What kind of plan and strategic plan do you set forth to make sure that this eventually, because if you don't have faculty on your side, obviously it's going to be a bit of a difficulty running the school. So just interested in hearing both of your thoughts on how you ensured a strategy for integrating the faculty.
Sure, I'm happy to start. So as I mentioned, we were able to acquire and bring over all of the faculty from NECB, New England College of Business, which was great. And so what we've decided to do, because it's a different culture on the Cambridge College side, a lot of their faculty are unionized. So that was something that was new to us. 95% of our faculty are adjunct faculty. So we have a very different model than Cambridge is used to. And so they've actually agreed, the provost has agreed to keep the faculty separate. So we will have online faculty. And with our online division, we actually have a master course that's built in Canvas, and an adjunct faculty is assigned to a master course. There is room for academic freedom where they can alter discussion boards, embed some faculty lectures and so forth. But for the most part, the online division is run from a master course, and the on-ground faculty have a lot more academic freedom in their area. And so they are reporting into a provost, and but for the on-ground and the online division, we've decided to keep things separate.
Yeah, for Kedge, there were no the difficulty. Well, first of all, we set up a work group with faculty, and we said, okay, as with before, you now have access to these documents. Tell us what you think, how you think the problems of the merger will, you know, what do you think the problems will be concerning faculty? So it was for them to identify it. That was the first thing, and we appointed heavyweights, people who would be quite critical. I wanted some of the faculty revolutionaries in the program, people who would argue with me about relatively neutral topics. I wanted people who were committed, who could read, and who would be quite critical of it. So that was the first point. And in the end, I think the major areas of friction were things like bonuses that we gave for research articles. You know, what was the payback if somebody produced a 2-star article, etc. The workload, you know, was it 180 hours for research? Was it 250? So all that was quite difficult. We had to sort of look at what would be the financial costs of harmonizing the system, and they were quite different. What was the number, you know, how many internships did a faculty member have to evaluate? How many third-year research reports to the faculty? All these nuts and bolts we really had to look at. So that was an issue. The other issue was generally the structure is quite similar, but you know, we had 2 academic directors who was going to take over. Which one? That again was an issue, and you know, there were some difficulties. We asked one lady to take, for example, we asked one lady to lead the discussions. There was a rejection because the faculty felt that they wanted somebody a little bit more forceful. But by and large, it went quite well. And the major issues were things like payments, number of hours to be worked, sabbaticals, all of these type of policies, because they were quite different. But again, we looked at them regularly. We requested sort of comments from faculty, and we came back with, this is what we're offering you. And they had a chance to relook at it, and in the end, it was accepted and it was validated.
Great. I've got another question for you, Philip. I'm going to reword the question a little bit here, but it talks about the appetite of European schools or French schools for mergers and acquisitions, and whether perhaps those mergers and acquisitions, there's an appetite for US-based business schools. So what are your thoughts on the European markets or perhaps French markets on this?
I think I probably saw the question. Was that the question that was asked about, you know? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
I opened it. At the moment, it's pretty sort of calm in terms of mergers and acquisitions. To my knowledge, there are no initiatives at the moment between French business schools. There was a talk at one stage that EM Lyon was thinking about merging with Grenoble, but it didn't happen. I think that's now put on hold. There has been, I think, a Chinese consortium has bought Brest Business School in Brittany. So that's, quite interesting. I think EM Lyon has been bought by some investment fund. You can check. I'm not sure. I noticed last week there was some comments in the press. Have they withdrawn from that? But so I think that what I'm reading about in the press is more private investors moving in to sort of help with finances. But if the schools who accept that always insist that there would be not-for-profit organizations. So I think the financial investors, probably they come in for sort of prestige, notoriety or whatever. So I think the business schools in general insist on having a not-for-profit approach. So my answer would be, at the moment, I don't see any significant projects in terms of inter-French school mergers. There have been a number of schools who have indicated that they have accepted private capital into their governance.
Caitrin and Henrik, have you seen any movements in the US market for international mergers and acquisitions?
I haven't currently. I'm sure there are a lot of discussions in this space, and in this especially in this kind of market, I think that's taking place. But I don't have any specific ones to share now. Thank Caitrin and Philip for really engaging conversations, and it was really insightful to learn about your cases. And of course, also Andrew, it was really rewarding to have you here talking about AMBA and BGA. And of course, I hope to see a lot of US schools join us as well moving forward, because this is a community like I started from in 2009. I got recruited to US through this network, and I've been super thankful for it all these years, and continue as an assessor and also helping represent the BGA here in the US market. And I think it has a lot to provide for schools outside the US, but especially in US, because here we have a big local market. And I think BGA actually can open the world for us in a very effective and also exciting way. So I hope that that message goes through also to US institutions who are looking for ways to find tentacles beyond the US borders.
Great. Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Best.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.